Okay, hi everybody. So, welcome to week 10. So, we're going to shift things a bit in our group work. You spent the last 8 weeks prior to spring break working on different case studies in wildlife management, thinking about these critically. They're generally not so straightforward, and there's a lot of complex elements that have to be evaluated. And so for this second half of the class, we're still going to have some case studies you talk about in group work, but we're also going to be shifting towards you working on developing your own case study. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Well, I mean that there are lots of wildlife populations around the globe that are the focus of management or will soon be the focus of management, right? There's some problem, something needs to be addressed that involves intervention of wildlife managers. What you're going to do for your project is you're going to select one of these. So what you're going to spend today do is pick two potential ones and work on that, but we'll get to that. But what you're going to do is you're going to select one of these, and then you're going to work up relevant information about this case study that will eventually go into a final report. So just to give you an idea, this is the breakdown of what you're going to be doing. And I say week of because this refers to everyone's weekly group work, which is obviously going to differ, in terms of what day you meet, right? So there's no specific day, it's the week of, right? So for this week of March 22nd, everybody's going to be working on coming up with two potential wildlife populations that can be the focus of their report. And then as the weeks go by, you're going to be spending time in your group gathering other relevant information, which will all eventually go into the final report. I do want to say, I'll talk a little bit more about group work for today, actually, at the end. Let me go through the main crux of this, and then I'll get to what we'll do today. So for the final report, all of this is in the details, the instructions, which can be found in Blackboard under course content. So I would encourage you to download those and look at them. Here is kind of just a quick summary of what's going to end up going into your final report, which is due on May 2nd, okay? You're going to introduce the wildlife management problem, okay? You're going to provide relevant information about the biology of the focal population, okay, so the populations that's the target of management. You're also going to provide relevant information on what we call the socio-political landscape, okay, so this is going to be what's going on in terms of the government, okay, is there government support for dealing with this population? What are the different stakeholders involved here, right? So you're going to try to get a feeling for the landscape in terms of who is wielding the power over this wildlife population and what different groups are there and what are their opinions on how this particular management problem should be dealt with. You're also going to provide information about any prior management that's been done on that focal population and what the outcome of those management actions were. Finally, you're going to get into the bulk of what you'll be working up in terms of a specific management plan that your group comes up with, okay? So this management plan is going to include at least two short-term goals that you want to achieve with this particular wildlife population, and plans of action about how you plan to meet those specific short-term goals, okay? Once you have introduced your plan, your group's plan, you'll talk some about the anticipated reactions of the different stakeholders that you identified earlier in the report. And think about, you can't always make everybody happy, right? Some people are not going to be okay with this, but are there, for those who maybe would disagree with the suggested management plan, are there points of compromise that could potentially be reached, right? So you could think about adaptations of your proposed management plan that would maybe make more of the stakeholders happy, right? You can never make everybody happy, but you have to at least try sometimes to accommodate different stakeholders. And then there'll be a reference section at the end, okay? So that's the idea of the final of the group project, right? And so you will, I'm sure, need to be spending time outside of just the group work each week, eventually working on this, especially once you get to the point where you're going to be putting the project together. But I'm trying to give you time during the group work to actually do a lot of the groundwork, do a lot of the research while you're all connected on Zoom together. After you submit your final report on May 2nd, I will quickly divvy them up and send them out to the groups. And each group, during the last week of classes, their group work will focus on doing a peer evaluation of the report submitted by 2 other groups, right? So trying to, I'll have a form that you'll fill out that will give you, you'll give constructive feedback about the project, you know, things that were good, things that could use improvement in terms of the report and the proposed plan, things like that. So that's the overall idea. For this first week, like I said, the goal here is to choose your wildlife population, but in reality, it's sometimes best to have a backup plan too. So for this week, you're actually going to be identifying 2 potential focal wildlife populations, right? So, and remember, these can be from anywhere in the world, right? So you could have a species that's focused in, you know, a population found in the eastern United States. Your other population, species, whatever, like can be, you know, I don't know, some tigers in parts of Asia, right? And like, so they don't have to be the same species. They don't have to be in the same geographical place. I'm just looking for you to come up with 2 of these that you can then spend some time in your group work in your this week, getting out some details, right? And so probably what you're going to need to do is that you're going to need to start researching and saying like, well, I'm interested. You can start in 2 ways, right? One could be, well, I'm interested in this type of animal, and so let's see if we can find something about, you know, a population that's a focus of management, or you know, some sign that there's a problem, so it needs to be soon a focus. Or you could think about it more broadly and just start searching for, you know, problematic wildlife populations or something like that, and put in the country or the region or something like that, right? So you all know how to use Google, so I'm sure you'll be able to do that just fine. I would recommend that as you do this, you not only use Google, but you also use Google Scholar or Web of Science, something that's going to give you access to the peer-reviewed literature, right? Just searching Google can often give you like lots of news stories and things like that, but you have to remember that if you're potentially, you know, case studies that are in other countries, especially ones where they don't speak English, right? They're not going to come up on a Google search so much, but you may in fact find peer-reviewed literature about that is published in English, right? Because people study stuff all over the world and then publish it in English-speaking journals. So I do have a couple stipulations about case studies of populations that you cannot use, okay? One of them is wolves in the U.S., okay? So everybody loves wolves, and frankly, I just don't want to read 9 out of 11 reports on wolves, basically. So there's lots of other stuff out there in the world, so just cutting out gray wolves I don't think should be a problem. I'd also prefer that you not focus on any species that we have spent an appreciable amount of time talking about in the group work, right? So if half the group work of 1 week was focused on, let's say we talked about bats and wind turbines, right? Then I'd prefer you not choose that, right? There are tons of stuff out there. If you are running into problems, talk to me about it, and we can talk about, you know, maybe if you guys are really interested in one particular case study, and, you know, we didn't like flush it all out basically in the group work, then I'm not opposed to that, but I just think there's a lot out there. So try to find some stuff that we really haven't talked about yet. So again, for this first week, in your Google Doc, there are prompts of what kind of information I want you to find. And again, I want you to find this for 2 different wildlife populations, okay? Because you know, next week you're going to start to focus in on just one, right? But it's often hard to know until you really dig a bit which is the better one. And then you also get a little time, you know, you get a week between this week and next week to kind of think about it a little bit more and see which one each of you and your group prefers, and then hopefully you can come to a consensus and move on from there. So if anybody has questions, please feel free to email me. But otherwise, good luck exploring.